Hi everyone, welcome back. Let's pick up from where we left off the last time in class. In the in-person lecture with you, I introduced what this course is about, which is web programming. Just as a recap, let me just go through some basic stuff that I think you should know before we start with today's activity. Now, at the end of this course, what we expect students to be able to do is to design and also create a web application. So we will start off by building our own web skills in terms of our web design skills by working on a number of projects. And this project is going to enhance us come out with our final projects, which could be in the form in groups that will be presented in groups. So at the end of this whole lecture, you will be able to have the chance to create your own web application that you can host online. Now, in this course, we will be using a special type of code editor or software that we're going to use in the creation of most of the things that we're going to do, and that is the Visual Studio Code. Most people call it VS Code. There are other alternatives that are also available, which is Sublime Text, Atom, Vim. Brackets used to be one of them, but now Brackets is deprecated, and it's no more being used. So Visual Studio is the one that we're going to incorporate or use in the coding of virtually everything that we do here. Now you can choose any of these. If you are comfortable with Atom or Sublime Text, you can use that in your coding. But for the purposes of this, we'll use the VS Code. Now, let's start with the web programming class. Now let me just bring out the slide. All right, so you can see over here, just a minute. All right, so on the screen, so this is the slide for the web programming class. As I told you, we'll be working on Python and also JavaScript. Now, in treating web programming, there are some basic concepts that you need to know and basic languages that you need to understand. So what we're going to do is we will start with the introduction of what HTML is and what CSS also is. Now, HTML, as you already know, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And what it does is it defines the structure of a web page. This structure can be interpreted by the web browser. An example of a web browser, Safari, Google Chrome, Firefox. And so the web browser, what it does is the structure of the web page that we already have, that we come out with, will be interpreted by the web browser. And in so doing, it will display the contents on the screen for us to see. We will start treating and dealing with, we'll start with some HTML codes and the rest. Now, generally, you should always have in mind that HTML and CSS most of the time go hand in hand. And it's a markup language which is used to outline the web page and a procedure for making our websites look more visually appealing. Now, right after talking about HTML, I remember talking to you about what Git. And I said it's a way to version control our collaboration with other friends or people who are working on the same project. So I'll introduce to you what Git is. We'll have a short introduction of what it is and how to use it. So the project that will be giving you for the final year, I'm sorry, for the project that I'll give you for the semester, end of semester, that will be in the group. I expect most of you to be using Git to collaborate with your friends. Now we will talk about Python 2. Python, I already know you've already started Python from first semester, and you're working on object-oriented using Python 2 as well. So I'm confident that you already know what Python is. So it's a widely used programming language, and we'll use it to make our site look more dynamic. So Python there is a special framework that Python comes with, which we call Django. So Django is a well-popular framework which we're going to use to develop our back end. I remember explaining what the back end is and what the front end is. So we use Django to develop our backend, and Django is a framework which is built on Python. So with your knowledge in Python, it becomes very easy to use Django in your application process, in the design process. Now, SQL models and migration. So this is a language which is used for storing and retrieving data, and Django's specific methods that will make it very easy to interact with SQL databases. Now, JavaScript will also be one of the programming languages that we will treat. And what it does is we're going to use it to make websites um, appear faster or make our website faster and more interactive. So we might be having some sort of interactivity happening on the web page based on what's maybe I click on a button, what the button will do and stuff like that. A button can inquire further questions from us. So that is how JavaScript will be used on the web programming in the web programming class. Now, on user interfaces, what we're going to deal with there are certain methods that we're going to use to make our websites um, easy for use by anybody. So our user interfaces will design our website in such a way that irrespective of the devices that you're going to use to view the web page, you know, text or information that is going to be displayed in the browser will look more appealing to the user using the application on any device. Now, the testing and the CI/CD, the testing CI and CD, which is the would deal with the learning, we deal with by learning about different methods that we're going to use or incorporate to make sure that updates of our web pages will happen and smoothly without any sort of errors coming in. And when our application is also developed, we probably will also delve into testing it and making sure things are in place and everything is working smoothly. Now, finally, for scalability and also security, you can see we have load balancing. Load balancing makes it possible for assuming there are so many people coming onto your site. You should be able to balance it to know how, for instance, we have about 3 servers, so we can balance this, the load that is coming in by sharing it amongst these servers, and so that one particular server does not really, take the loads and crash or, and most of the time it will crash. So the scalability and the security aspects, that is what we're going to delve in. So by doing so, we are going to make sure that our website can be accessed by so many people at any particular point in time, and that they might be safe from any malicious threats that probably some of our code mistakenly might be producing. All right, so that is about the web programming overview, the things that we're going to do. Now let's delve into the activity itself today. So we're going to start with HTML and CSS. So now let's start with HTML. As I said earlier on, I said HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It helps define the structure of the web page. So let's begin by, we'll start by writing a simple HTML code in an HTML file. So generally before that, this is how HTML code looks like. So before you start, coding or coming out with a script in HTML, these are the basic steps that you need to take. We first of all have what we call the doc type. And what the doc type does is it helps the browser to know the particular version of HTML that we are working on. So that is a doc type. Then we do have what we call the HTML lang in. So the lang tells us that the language that we are working our HTML document is, that the content that we have on our site will be English. So these are elements. So we have the HTML elements. Anytime you open an element, most of the HTML elements, you need to find a way to close it with the /. Now we will do this. We'll create a simple HTML file. But let's go through it. So right after having our doc type and HTML elements, the next one is the head tag. So elements are also termed as tags. So most of these elements always would have a closing. So when you open the HTML, the header tag, you have to close it. But there are special tags or elements that do not need a closing tag, and we call them singleton tags. We will have we would treat some of them for you to see. Now within the header is where we have the title. So from here you can see we have hello world. Then inside the hello world we have our body. So the body is where the contents of the things that we place on the site will look like. So now with this in mind, let's start the creation of one HTML file and see how we're going to display it in the browser. Okay, so first of all, you launch your VS Code. Let me just open the VS Code. All right, so this is how the VS Code looks like when you, after installing, you launch it. And I'm going to put up the software that you need online on the VLE so you can download it and use it. But those of you who would also want to get different versions, you can always go online and type VS Code. You can download it from there. Now, this is how the dashboard of the VS Code looks. This is how it looks like. Now, I already have on my drive C a folder called Web Programming. So when you launch it for the first time, you might see the welcome message or get started over here. You go through the basic stuff, just maintain what you have in there and click on open. You click on open a folder. So you can create a folder on your drive C. I have a folder created on my drive C, and that folder is called Web Programming. And within that, I have HTML, CSS. So I open that folder. So all the files that I'm going to, all the HTML files that I'm going to create would reside in this particular folder. So I'll select this folder, and this is what I have in here. So this is the folder that my files, HTML files and CSS files would be. In your case, when you open that folder, you make a selection of the folder. You might be VS Code will give you a warning that you need to, approve that the path that you have selected is secured and it's okay, to use. So please approve it by checking the box and saying the path is secured and it's okay for it to use. So when you are done, then we can start by going through this process. So we begin with our HTML code. So this is what we call the HTML. This is how the HTML basic code looks like. Now, every HTML file that you create, you might have to go through the same, code edits one by one. It's a little difficult. So we have something we call a boilerplate code, which is found in VS Code, a boilerplate code. And what it does is it's able to give us this code that we see in here, all these codes that we see in here, at a go. It gives it to us at a go. So we don't need to, type these one by one and all of that. So we will use the boilerplate, and that is giving us, that is within the HTML, the Visual Studio code. And now, how do we activate that? But before that, we need to create a file that is going to hold the contents of the HTML that we're going to, like this particular HTML. So first of all, whilst you have this open, the HTML CSS folder already open in here, you can click on new, to add a new file. So we can create a file called index.html. The moment we type index.html, you can see Visual Studio is able to know that, okay, we're going to work in an HTML kind of code. So you can just press enter, and now it opens the file for us. Now, all HTML files are saved in .html. When we come to CSS2, you realize that all CSS files is also saved in .css. All right, now let's try and pull out this boilerplate. In doing so, because we are working with HTML, we start that by typing HTML, and what we have in here is we have something we call the IntelliSense. You can see the IntelliSense that pop up. It's intelligent to know that you want to probably come out with the boilerplates. It makes it easier for you to type in to make a selection and produce the boilerplate for us. So from the IntelliSense drop down, which is this, we're going to select HTML5. You remember I said we used to have HTML4, but now most of the tags in HTML4 are deprecated, so we don't use it again. Most of the browsers now are working with HTML5, and it is so simple and better off in rendering most of these elements in the browser. So most browsers are now on HTML5. So we select HTML5 and press enter. The moment we do that, you can see by default there are some selection points that is given in here. So from here, from our slide, you can see we had HTML, the language type, the head, the body, and the closing tag for HTML. In the same way, this is what we have. Let me try and increase this so you can see appearance. Let me zoom. So, all right, so I think, let me go out by one. I think you can see now what we're going to be going through. All right. So now by default, we have the doc type giving us, that is telling us that we are working on HTML5. The HTML language we're using is English, and we have the head tag, So the opening and the closing of the head tag or head element. These are examples, other meta tags that comes with the boilerplate. So for now, we are not going to touch them. Now, what is important is the title. The title is what's shown in the browser. At the top of the browser window, what we type in here is what is going to show. So we can begin by typing something like, let's say hello, IS and CS plus student. So that is the title of the page or the window. So anytime you're coming out with an HTML document, you have the doc type, you declare the doc type, you give your opening of the HTML, and you give the head, and within the head is a title. The title always goes within the head. That is how the structure is. Then afterwards, we have what we call the body. So the body is what we see inside the browser. All the content that we see in the browser will fall within the body. So we can say, let's say, hello, everyone. Welcome to the web programming class. All right. So when we have this, we can save the document and open it in our browser. Now, you can see from the path, so we can right click on this one and say show in browser or open with live server, or better still preview. So this one will try and preview the website in our browser in the Visual Studio. It seems it's taking a little while. All right, let's use the browser to make it easier. So we can just right click on it and open with a live server. Just a minute, I want to display it for you to see. All right, so you can see we have the Hello IS and CS students, but unfortunately the content in here is not there. So let's try and figure out what is happening. So quickly, I'll go back again to the our page. Okay, so you can see we have a little error in here. So the hello shouldn't come with an opening tag. So this is how it's supposed to be. So we'll go back again to our page to see what is there. All right, so quickly, let's go to the page and refresh what we already had. So this is the page. Let's refresh it. Just a minute. All right, so you can see, hello everyone, welcome to the web programming class. This is now showing in our browser, and this is the title that we give in for the title element. What we type in there was hello IS and CS students, and then inside the body, what we had was hello everyone, welcome to the web programming class. Now bringing out this again, you can see this is what we had. So the title was inside the head, and what we have in here is what is displayed at the title of the page, which was this, what we see in here. And what we have here is what is displayed in the body of the HTML element called body. So that is how, this is a simple HTML page that we have created, and that is called index.html. So virtually every HTML page that you create, this is what we're going to, these are the basic HTML structure that we'll be pulling out and bringing all the time. And because we don't need to be typing it over and over again, that is a little tedious. That is how come we use the boilerplate, by typing the keyword HTML. And based on that, the IntelliSense pops up 3 different options for us to select HTML5 that populated what we have in here. All right, so now you can try and start with this. Now, there are some few things that I also would want to talk to you about. You could see Visual Studio or VS Code also has an inbuilt preview, which we can use. That is, you can click on the open preview, and that can give you a preview of how the information or the content that we have in our websites looks like. So coming back again here, if we were to add or change or add some new content to it, right? This is just a way of adding new information to our web page. So when you have it this way, it means it's not saved. Of course, we need to save what we have here. In the preview, you can see it gives us a feel of how the content that we've typed in our HTML body will display on the web page. So if we should go back again to the web browser, by saving it, first of all, we need to save this first by clicking on this to save. When we save and we go back to our browser, we should be able to see the other information popping up. This is just a way of adding information to the web page. All right. So that is how to create an HTML element. I'm sorry, HTML. That is the structure of the HTML, and we've learned how to create it. How to create an HTML file and come out with the contents in that particular file, which we see in here as index.html. So coming back again to the slides, you realize that in the first line, what we do is we are declaring to the browser that we are writing the document in the latest version of HTML, which is by the use of the doc type. Then, of course, the version that we are using is HTML5. Right after it, we have the page which consists of the next HTML element. So all these are elements. So we have a nested HTML element in here. So an example of such element is the HTML and also the body. Now, each of these have an opening and also a closing, as I said. So the HTML has an opening and it has a closing by the use of the forward slash that looks like this. So we open with a less than HTML, then greater than, then we close with a less than forward slash HTML, depending on the type of element that we have in there. So all these are elements, HTML elements. And of course, the same elements, sometimes we do call them as tags. So we open the elements by the use of the body tag and by closing the body tag. So that gives us, we have the element called body and the tags. This is how we open and we close it. So you notice that virtually almost all the inner elements is in a way indented to the right. So for instance, we have HTML, we have a closing tag. The head is indented to the right of the HTML. This makes it very easy to read the code that we have in here. The title, as I said, will display is what is going to display in the head or the window of the browser. The contents, the information that needs to go to the title of the window title of the browser. So that is what will show in there. All right. So now moving on. So that is the hello world that we came in with. Now we have what we call the document object model. Usually we term it as a DOM, DOM. So it's more of an abbreviation for document object model. The DOM, what it does is, well, it's actually a convenient way of visualizing. It's a convenient way of visualizing the way HTML elements relate with each other in a tree-like structure. So with the information that you see in here, this is an example of the DOM layout for a page which we just wrote. So we first of all started with the HTML element. So that is the main elements in order to come out an HTML structure. The first that we deal with is the HTML element. So within it, we have the head, which is shown in here. And within the head, we have the title. Of course, if per the levels that you see, or by the indentation, we see that the head and the body are of the same level under the HTML. So we have the head and the body being on the same level. So the HTML usually we have the head and we have the body. And inside the head, we normally have what we call the title. As you move along, you realize that there are certain elements that we can put in the head as well. It's not only the title that goes in there. If you recall, you realize that the boilerplate gave us an element called meta, which I said we will be talking about later on. So those are other elements that falls under the head. Now the body, for this particular example, what we have in the body is the hello world, and that is what is displayed in our browser. So the DOM is a convenient way of visualizing. This is the DOM, document object model. Object model is a convenient way of visualizing the way the HTML elements relate with each other by the use of a tree-like structure. So the DOM layout for a page that we have in here is what has been expressed in here. Now, these are not the only elements that are in HTML. There are so many elements that we have not talked about. There are lots of them, but we're going to talk about the ones that we feel is important for our course. On the VLE, I'm going to put up a full zip file of the W3 School HTML course. I expect you to go through and know the other elements that are available. Now, there are many HTML elements you may want to use, as I said, to customize your page. And an example can be the heading element, the list element, the bolded section. And in the next examples that we're going to go through, you'll see some few elements that we would show in action. There are one more thing that you need to know is something we call comments. Something we call comments. So we'll talk about that. So in commenting in HTML, I will explain that to you when we're programming. So these are some elements that we're going to common element that most HTML, most people that work on HTML normally use in coming out with a structure that is interpreted by the browser on the screen. And you will be able to see an elements like H1, H2, H6, OL, UL, which is ordered list, unordered list, image, anchor, which is used for links, tables, forms. In fact, this side, the tables and the forms, virtually all of these, we are going to talk about them one by one. Now, let's start with going through the first one, which is the head, before we come into CSS. So let's start with the other elements that I believe are common element that we need to know. All right, so let's begin. So I'm going to create a new page. I can either right click on it and say new file, or click on this particular icon to create a new file. So I'm going to call this HTML. Okay, let me call it page.html. Because the file will be saved in HTML, I feel we shouldn't create html.html. So I can call it page.html. All right, so I'll press on enter, and you can see I have my HTML page. The file has been created, but we don't have anything in there. So I'll begin by typing HTML for the IntelliSense to display the other options. And I'll select 5. So with this, I'm going to give it a document title as, let's say, all HTML elements here. So that is the title I'm going to use. Now, if you recall, I said there is one special thing that I wanted to talk about, that is comments. Comments are more or less a special type of tags that the browser reads but does not interpret it on the browser for us to see. So if you have a tag that is written in comments, in the comment tag, the browser is not going to display that information in there. But for the purposes of whoever picks your HTML code will understand what you were trying to do. So first of all, I'm going to, for each of the things I talked about from here, I'll be creating comments to let you know what we are dealing with at any point in time. So now let's start with the first one. Let me go back to the VS Code. So I'm going to begin by creating so to write a comment, you begin with a less than question mark, double hyphen, and you can see automatically VS Code has given me the remaining. So after the dash dash, so now I can put in the comment here. So what am I going to do? So we can create headings using H1 through H6 as tags. Now, so this is a comment. Now, what I have in here, when I run this in the browser, so first of all, let me try and see work. If I try to preview this, let me try and preview it in the browser. So I'll go back again to the browser, which we opened earlier. So just a minute. Okay, when I run the code in the live server or in my browser, you can see the comments that we had in here. It's not displaying inside the browser. But if we should check we should inspect the code, the page source, you can see in here that we have the comment that I type in here over here. We can create headings using H1 to H6 as tags. So the source code for this is displaying this, but unfortunately, inside the content we have here, we don't have the comment displaying. So that is how comments are. It is necessary to comment in HTML. You know how comments are through your Python, the lecture you had in Python. So comments are necessary to make it easier for anybody to read your code, anybody who picks up your code to read it. So let's go back again and continue with where we left off. We started by what I said was we can create headings using H1 through to H6 as tags. So now let's begin by maybe creating a simple H1 tag. So you can start H1. So you type H1, then by pressing enter, it gives you the chance to input the content in there. So for instance, let's say we're going to have let's say group 2, or let's say okay, let's say class, let's say programs in computer science department, science plus an engineering department. Let me shorten it, department. So that is H1. Now we have H1 through to H6. So we can have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Now H1 is the highest element or the largest heading that we can ever get on the page, followed by H2. So H2 is the next highest or biggest element in displaying text on the page. So now let me go back again to my browser, my previous browser, and refresh the page. Sorry, let me open it in the just a minute. Let me open it in the live server so that we see what is happening. So in the live server, this is what we have. Initially, I increased the font, so I think this time around we can see. So in the live server, this is what we have here. So these are programs in computer science and engineering department. So that is quite big. Going back again to the codes to let's continue with the next biggest heading that we have. And that one is what I termed as H. Is like I said is H2. So when we type H2 in here, automatically VS Code opens and closes it for us. So and within it, so under the programs, we have three different programs. We have information security, sorry, information systems and technology. And the next one that we also have is we can still call it H2. That is also second S. So we have computer science, and engineering. And so for H2, we can have another one, which is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity. So these are the programs that we have in the department, and these are all H1. So you can see, going back again to our browser, you can see that, let me refresh the page. Let me save it first, sorry. So I'll save, going back again to the browser. You see we have, these are all H1, H1, H2, H3, H4. Sorry, H1, H2, and these are all H2. So now I would want to quickly put up just the heading for you to get it easier. So heading 1, this is heading 1, which is the higher, the biggest. So this is heading 2. That is how it looks like. We have heading 3. Then 3, that should come with a tag H3. So this should be 3 and not 2. You can see it has changed it for us. This is heading 4. Heading 4. We can have the next one, which is heading 5, H5, which you term as heading 5. Then we can have the last one, which is H6. So we don't have H7, H8, and the rest, but we have up to 6 headings that are available in HTML. So those are the elements that we have. So you can see we have heading 1, heading 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 is the highest and 6 is the least in terms of size. Now, that is about the headings, the different types of headings that we can have. Now, let us try to also, put up some content online and also add the next elements that I have in here. We have ordered list and unordered list. But before that, I would want to let you know of these elements or tags that are available. So quickly, let's go back again to VS Code. All right, so that is just about it. I would want us to, now you know of the headings, so 1 through to 8, but I would want to comment out this so that we don't have so many things on our page. So let me just comment out this, and I'll end somewhere here. All right, so that is where the comments end. So if I save this and go back again, you realize that we have only H1 and H6 in here, and that is okay. So now let's continue with the next comment or heading, that the next element that I want to talk about, and that is the next comment I want to talk about. Sorry. And that is a strong and high tax. or elements, what do they do? What they do is they give us bold and also italics respectively. So just in the same vein, in your Microsoft Office suite, you can bold and you can also italicize a document, sorry, a text. So in the same way, in HTML, if you want to bold a text, you use the tag strong. If you want to italicize a text, you use the tag I. So let's try and create one. So for instance, assuming I want to italize something, for instance, there's this statement that says bold word and an italicized word. So how can we do this? Assuming we want to bold this word and we want to italicize this particular word. So in doing that, I said the element strong is used to bold. So we can start by opening the tag and typing strong. We'll close the tag. Of course, the word needs to be inside the tag. So a bold word. Sorry, let me bring this one in here. Let me bring it here so it becomes. So we have a word in here. So this is a bold word and an italic word. So in italicizing, we use the I. So we can bring in the I, this one in here. All right. So when we save this, the bold will be made bold and italicized will be made italic in our browser. So when we go back again, we can see the word, this has been bold, the word bold is bolden, and the italicized word has been made italic. So we use the tag strong and the tag I to do this. In previous versions of HTML, we were using B for bolding, and that would also work. It depends on the browser, but because we specify the type of HTML we are working with by specifying the doc type, we will use the bold. So that is about bolding text on and also making text italicized or italic on the page. There is another element that I want us to also talk about, which is the A element or anchor elements we normally use. So I'll begin by just to make it easier for other people to know what I'm doing. So we're going to we can link to another page or another website or page or websites by using another website, maybe google.com, by using the A tag, which is anchor tag. So how is that done? So in the same way, when we type A and press enter, you can see the A is the anchor tag. And it's telling us that if the A element has an href attribute, so the anchor tag, this is the tag itself, or the element is the A tag, and this is what you call the attribute. Some tags have attributes, others do not really have attributes, but you can create attributes for such tags. By default, the anchor tag comes with an attribute called href, which gives us the reference to where we want to, the next page or the next website that we want to visit. And that attribute also comes with every attribute also comes with, should have a value. So the value is what is put in here. So by just typing A, as I typed, so for instance, I typed A and press enter, and automatically this was generated by the VS Code for me. So ahref is equal to, so the href is the attributes and it is requesting for a page. So assuming I want to go to google.com, when I press on a specific information that I'm going to put in here, it will take us to google.com. So for instance, google.com, if we want to open it, we start with HTTPS, like telling it the protocol that is a hypertext transfer protocol, which is secured, www.google.com. So let's put it in a sentence to make it easier, more readable. Click here, here. Sorry. So if you want to visit the Google website, we use capital Google website. If you want to visit the Google website, what I'm saying is now click here. So I have here. So the text that you see, I can press enter here so I can it flows so that you can see it. Enter here doesn't mean that the HTML sentence is going to break down. It will not. It's what it does is all spaces are neglected unless you use special elements to break the tags or to break the sentences. So just to make it more easier for you to read, I have brought it down here. So if you want to visit the Google website, click here. So the click here, that is what we have. We are using the anchor tag and giving it google.com address. So this particular text is what is going to be made clickable. So we can click on this for the websites to move from our page to google.com. So that is how anchor tags are used to link pages or go to different pages. If we were to have another page, so for instance, so I'm done with this one. Assuming I want to open another page. Open another page. Or open, let's say, or click here to open page.html. You already know that we have page.html in here. So we're going to create an anchor tag that when we click on any text in here, it's going to open this particular page. So I'll come back again here. So it means you're going to add an anchor tag to it. So I type A, and I'll type A, enter. Sorry. A, enter. So you can see where do I want, what do I want to do? I want to open page.html. Then I would want the click here to be inside, to be the clickable text. So I'll move it into the anchor. Let me bring this one down here. To be the clickable anchor. So this is what is going to click. So now let me save this, go back again to our browser. And this is the content that we have here. So after the italicized word, it says, if you want to visit google.com, click here. So when you can see the icon has changed. The mouse has changed from this to a hand, making us aware that we can click on this. When I click on this, it will take us to google.com. Now I can also click on this to go to the page HTML, to go to page.html. So I'll go this one, I'll click on this one first. So the page is HTML. I need to reference it properly. So, but before that, let me click on this one to go to Google. So this takes us straight to google.com. I can go back in here. This is not showing mainly because let me be very sure we have the page.html in here. Let's see. All right, so we have page.html. Let's see if it's the same content that we have in here. So that is it, page.html. We are opening the same page. So assuming we want to go to index.html, then we could have used ahref index.html, which was the first page that we created. So to open, let's say index.html. So I'll save it again, go back again to our browser. So you can see it has changed. So now when I click on this one, it has taken us to the first page that we created, which was index.html. And when we click on this one, it takes us to google.com. So that is how we use anchor tags in HTML to link pages and also different websites together. We'll go on with the next one, which is found in here, which is the ordered list. We'll start with the ordered list and also the unordered list. So at this point, we are going to create list that is ordered and list that is unordered. So just in the same way that I've been talking about, we would come out with a comment, and this is what we're going to do. We are creating an ordered list. We use unordered list, which is on UL for unordered list and also OL for ordered list. So let's begin by starting with ordered list, or better still, an unordered list. It means the list is not ordered. So an unordered list. So an example could be a list of maybe fruits. So we can list fruits. So to begin writing an unordered list, we use the tag or element UL. So UL stands for unordered list. So that is the first tag. Now the UL is the on. We've told the browser that we are coming out. We want to come out with an unordered list. Now let us list the elements or the things that we want to put on the site. So for instance, if we want to come out with a list of fruits, we can say we use the li for list to start listing these elements or these fruits. So li, and the first fruits that we want to use probably will be mango. Assuming we have another fruit, we can also use the same element li and list the second element. And that element could be orange. In the same way, you can list another element and call it maybe pineapple. And finally, the last element that you're going to use is going to call another fruit. The last fruit maybe pear. All right. Since we said this is an unordered list, it is not going to number this, but it's just going to give a bullet of the content that we put in the list. So going back again to our browser, this is how an unordered list is going to look like. When we go back again to the page, and this is how an unordered list looks like. We have mango, orange, pineapple, pear. So that is how unordered list looks like. I would want us to have it in order. So I'm going to break the page and put it on a new line to make it more easier. So I'll put it in a paragraph. Let me just go back again. So in doing so, I would want to put this whole thing in a paragraph tag, in a P tag, which is a paragraph. So P, and I'll put this whole thing in there, just to have our information a little organized. So we have unordered list. We have mango, orange, pineapple, and pear. So in the same vein, if we want to also come out with an ordered list, let's put it in a paragraph. We can call it an ordered list. So it means it is in an order. So we begin by using the tag OL for ordered list. And that is the parent tag. And within it, we will have the list tag. So an example could be, an example of ordered list could be, maybe we want to even arrange what we have in there. We can have mango, we can have orange, we can have the same thing, pineapple, we can have the last one, which is pear. So we have we now have an ordered list. Previously, we had an unordered list. So that is the difference between this. So let's save this and go to our browser to see how it looks like. So you can see we have it ordered, right? Using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is not ordered. So it use bullets. So now you know the difference between ordered list and unordered list. So we're talking about the next thing, that is from our web page, how to include images on our website. So we've been able to talk about the H1s, the bolding, the italicizing a Word document, a text. We've come out of an ordered list and also an unordered list. Now, how do we add images to our website? So to do that, we'll go back again to our VS Code and we'll look out for inside the VS Code. What we can do is, now you can see in our HTML folder, in our HTML CSS folder, we have index.html and page.html. Let me pull out, I said mine is found in drive C. So I'm going to pull it out and show you what I have in here. So inside here, I have HTML. HTML. Inside the HTML, I have index.html and page.html. So I can, first of all, we want to add images to our website. So usually what I do is I always find ways to organize my files. So I can create a folder here and call it image or IMG. Any of them should work. It depends on what you want to do. So I can create a folder called image. Then you can see that same folder has been created inside over here. I could have also come here inside the VS Code and right click and say new folder, and that will give me the chance to create a new folder. So I can call the folder maybe IMG. So when I have two folders, IMG and image. If I go back again to it, you can see the IMG has been created over here, but I would want to delete one. So I'll just select one and I would delete. I'll delete it. I'm going to use it. I'll use the IMG tool as a folder that will hold all my images. Now, if I have a picture, for instance, I'm going to pick a picture from my folder, from my folder, and put it in the image folder. So let me pick a picture, a very nice picture, which I think we can use. Okay, so I'll put the picture in the img folder. So let's see. You can see we don't have any picture here. Let me put the picture in the im folder. You can see the picture is being shown in here in the browser. So in the VS Code, we have the picture in here. So this is the picture. This is what the picture looks like. Now, assuming we want to put this picture in our web page, how do we do that? As I said, I like organizing my files. So we are already in the pages, the page.html. How do we incorporate a picture in our website? So to do that, we would begin by typing the img, which stands for image. So I'm going to start, but I can call this one an image. So adding an image or picture on the website. So I'll begin by typing img, which stands for image. So press enter. So now the first attribute that is the image element is requesting is the src, which stands for source. So now we have to locate where the image is. And the image that we want to put on the page is found in the img folder. So I'll start by typing the page.html is on the same level as this. So I can start by typing this particular name. So I'll type img, then forward slash. The image is inside img. So forward slash, then the name of the image. So which was given to us. One, we'll go again. So we have 1x1.web.p. The image extension is WebP. Yours can be JPEG or JPG or PNG or whatever. You just make a selection of the image in the source. Now the alternate text, what it does is in situations where the picture is unable to display on the website because of maybe internet connection, the text will show for you to know the image that was supposed to come but was unable to appear. That is one way of using the alternate. The second way is people who are visually impaired, who are unable to see what is on the web page when they but can hear when they visit your site and they are going through the content of the site. The alternate text will tell them that there is a picture here and the picture is maybe this. So you have to give the alternate name or text to the picture that we put in here. From what you see in here, this is more of WordPress, how to install WordPress. So it's a picture of WordPress. And so we can say WordPress installation picture. Installation picture. So that is enough. Now there is something I will talk about. But first of all, let me save this and come back again to the site. Let's go back again to how the display is going to show on our site. So we'll go back again to our browser. All right, so you can see that it says adding, we have at the bottom here, adding an image or a picture to the website. Then right after it, we have the picture. And what we have here is quite big. So I would want us to put the picture on a different page, on a different line. So in doing that, I'll put this whole text in a paragraph to make it easier for this to go to a different line. All right, so I'll go back again to my Visual VS Code and then put this in a paragraph. So a p tag, that's a paragraph tag. I can either cut this and move it to the back here. Save it. Go back again to the website. Let's see. So we have the image in here. You can see this image is quite big. So the image element can have other attributes. So far, the only attribute that we have for the image element in the VS Code that you see in here inside our page.html is the alternate or the alt attribute. We can have another to help us with the size or the width of the picture. So we can have width as another attribute, and we will specify how wide the picture should be. So we can say the picture should be 300 pixels. If we type 300, it will work. If we add pixels to it, it will work. So when we save this and we go back again to our browser, you can see the size of the picture has now reduced to 300 pixels, which is more visible for us to see in our web page, which is not quite big, which is not too big. Now what we can also do is to add the height of the picture too. So by typing height and specifying the height that we want, maybe let's say 500. Now there is one thing I will talk about after this. So when we save this and we go back again to the picture, you can see that this picture is stretched. And professional wise, it's not the best of things to be doing whenever you create a website and stretch your images. Now, I always would prefer whenever you use the width, you don't use the height. If you use the width attributes, do not use the height attributes. If you use the height attribute, do not use the width attributes. That would help organize or put your picture in the right aspect ratio that is original to the picture that you put on the page. So if we were to remove the width from this and save, it said we are using 500 pixels. You see, the picture is there all right, but it was not stretched. So we can reduce the height of the picture to maybe, let's say 200 pixels. And let's see how it shows. You see, the picture was not stretched, the height was given, and automatically by using just the width or the height attributes, the aspect ratio of the picture is maintained. And that is a good practice. Personally, I always prefer using the width instead of the height. So I'll go by the width, which is 300 pixels, which also is shown in here. So that is one thing that you should always be mindful of whenever you're developing. You are putting up pictures online for people to see. That is a good practice that you should always be working on. So, for instance, assuming there are times we might want to make pictures clickable so that people can click on those pictures and it will go to maybe a different website. So, for instance, assuming I click on this, I want this image to be clickable. And then when I click on it, it should go to maybe the VLE, the VLE website that we have on campus. How can we do that? So in doing so, it means we are going to combine the A attributes on this particular picture so that we can take it to the VLE website. So now let's go back again to the VS Code. So when I come in here, I want to make the image itself clickable. So from here, you realize that we use the anchor tag, the A attributes in the A anchor element, and we wrap it around the click here. This time around, the click here is not going to show, but rather it's an image that is going to show. So we're going to create an A tag and wrap it around the image. So we can do that by just specifying A, and it's requesting for the href. Where do we want the page to go when we click on the image. We want it to go to the UMAT BLE, so we specify ble.umat.edu.th. Then ideally we're supposed to have the content in here, where that content in here will be clickable before the closing of the A tag. So I'll just cut this and paste it at the back, at the end of the image. So we are more or less wrapping the image tag around the we are wrapping the A element or tag around the image tag. So when I save this and go back again to the website, this is what you are going to see. So we will see something like this. So we have the image in here. Now you can see this particular image is now clickable. And at the bottom, you can see the website displayed at the bottom. So when I click on this, it takes us to the VLE website, which is on the campus. So these are ways that you can add hyperlinks to images and text. In fact, anything that you want to make it clickable, you can add the A tag to it. So this is about adding images to your website. Now, still on the same page, we've been able to talk about images, anchor tags. So now let's talk about tables. Now let's move on to the next element, which is the table. So we're going to create a table that looks similar to this table you see here. So we have office items where we have the serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have the products and the number of products. So this is an example of a table which we want to have in our HTML document or website. Now this is just a picture, but of course, you can upload a picture like this, but we would want to come out with the elements table and how we can structure it in our HTML document. So this will serve as a guide to come out with a table in HTML. So the element is called HTML. Let's go to our VS Code and start the creation. Now we've been able to create images and the rest. Of course, if you recall, I always try to use the paragraph tag to put up information in on a new line. If you also want to add spaces, more spaces, and without using a paragraph, you can use the BR tag, and that will work, which is break. Others would also use something like this. So you can break and break as many times as you want. The B stands for bold, as I said, for HTML4. So let's break so that we have enough spaces before the table. So we can have BR for break. That should work. So we begin. Well, I said there are certain tags or elements that closes by itself. An example is a BR tag. So it's a singleton tag. Another example is the image tag. The image that we put up there, it's also a singleton tag. The image tag closes itself. So let's see. There's the image tag. It didn't have a closing tag, but when we open it, closed by itself. So it's also an example of a singleton tag. Singleton tag. All right. So let's start with the table. In creating a table, the elements that we're going to use, or the tag that we're going to use, is what we call a table. So you can begin by typing table, and as you can see in here, we have the table elements opening and closing for us. Now the table from here, let me bring it here. Before the table, we have what we call the office item. So let's create this one before we start coming out with the table. So on top of the table, maybe in an H1 or let's say an H2, we're going to have this showing office items. So we have office items, and inside the table, we will start by creating each of these headings, which is the serial number, the product, and the number of products. So this will form what we call, this would be in what we call table head. So the table element has a nested element. And the first one, an example of the first or one of the elements is the table head. The other is the table body. And inside the table head, we can have the th tag, which we term as also the table head. So all the table heads, these would be the table heads, and all of these will be in the table head element. So S number will be in the th element, th element, th element. So we have 3 of the th and 6 of the 1, 2, 3, and 6 of the T body elements, which will hold the table data. So first of all, we are going to, under the table elements, we're going to have a table, 3 table heads. So we begin by the table, and the first nested element we have is the table head. So inside the table head, that is where we have the table, we'll call it TH, which is an abbreviation more or less for table head. The reason we have TH is automatically going to bold or bolding the products that we have in here as a head for us. That makes it easier for us, for the browser to understand. So the first head we have is S number, which is the serial number. The second TH we have is the, from here is the product. The next TH we have is the number of products. So number, sorry, products. So now we've been able to construct this side of the table. So the whole of this is the table head. We've been able to construct the respective HTH. So now all the individual cells that we see here will be in what we call table body. So we're going to create a table body, and within the table body, that is going to hold each of the rows that we see. So this is row 1, row 2, row 3, and so on and so forth. And within each row, we have what we call the table, what do you call it? The rows. Within each row, we have what we call the cells, and each of the cells would be what we call the table data. So this is contained in the table data, which is cell. So begin by typing. So we've been able to construct that for the table head, which is the first nest under the table. So the next one is the table body. So inside the table body, we have the respective rows. That is the TR. In our case, in the other case, it was the table head. So for the first row, what we had was, so inside the table row, which is the row that we have in here. So there's the first row. We have table data. So we have 3 of these. So we are going to replicate what is here. So we have the table data. So the table data are always found inside the table row. So we have the first one, which is going to be TD. TD. That is the table data, and that's contained 1. And this corresponds to this what we have in here. We have the next one, which is TD, which is so TD. The next one, the first one was the serial number. The next one is the product books. The next one is 4. So books. The next one is TD and 4. That is the quantity. So let's see if we are on the same page. So we go to our browser and we try to refresh to see if what we have is working for us. Bingo, it looks like it's working. So we have our SN1, the product is books, the next one, number of products is 4. So let's populate the others. So we'll go back to the VS Code again. Within it, of course, so we've been able to come out with the first row. The next one is going to be TR, also the second row. And within that, we have our TD with the table data, which is number 2. We have the second TD, which is going to be this content in here, pencil, and it's 5. So we have pencil, and the quantity is 5. TD quantity is 5. So I'm going to copy this and replace it and duplicate it for the others, and we'll just edit what you have in there. All right, so this is 2. Let's go to 3. So the content for 3 is laptops and 5. And this is laptops, and the quantity is 5. The next one is tables, and the quantity is 9. We have tables, and the quantity is 9. The next one is chess, and the quantity is 7. Chess, the quantity is chess. The quantity is 7. The last one is printer, and the quantity is 8. We have printer, printers, and the quantity is 8. Saving this and going to our browser, let's see what we get. All right, so we can see we've been able to replicate the table. However, we are unable to see the outline of this particular table. And that makes it a little difficult to really read what is there. So in doing that, what we can do is to, there are 2 ways of doing that. We can use CSS. CSS, what it does is it helps in the presentation of the tags or element that we have on the page to look more beautiful, more realistic, and more nice for users to understand what we have on there. We can also do, what we can also do is to give the table a border of maybe 1. So in doing so, but that is not the best practice. But we can do that for this exercise by just giving an attribute to the table, an attribute called border, and giving it, let's say, 1 pixel. So that will place a border around the table that we have. So let's see how it's being displayed in here. You can see we have a border around the table that we have in here. Of course, you are seeing more or less like a double line. We are not using CSS to style this table, so we will leave it here. When we hit on CSS, we will find ways to make this table look more appealing. All right, so we've been able to talk about how tables look like, or we'll be using the table elements. Now let's go to the next one, which is the form element. Well, let's talk about the next one, which is the form element. So the form element is also another set of elements that is really important whenever you create websites. And its importance is mainly because of how it's able to collect information from users. Now you can allow users to either enter information when using the HTML form by picking information from users, which can contain several different types of inputs. In a later course, or as we move along, you will learn on how to handle information once a form has been submitted. That is the back end. We'll talk about some few other things. There are so many form elements that are available, some of which we might not be talking about here, but I would refer you to the W3 School blog site for you to go through. Now, a form element there has so many tags. So an example is the form tag or the form element itself. We have the input tag where we specify an input control by allowing members to put in information. There is a text area, there is a label, there is a field set, and this specifies a group of related contents that should be in a particular area. So for instance, if you are taking bio data of somebody applying for information, the person's name, the person's age, the person's date of birth together with hometown can all form into one particular field set. We can have an element like, or a tag like the legend, the select, the option group, the option itself. We can have an element like the button and so on and so forth. And I'm going to talk about some few ones in here. And I would want you to also explore the W3 School blog websites to see other form elements that exist because you'll be using it in your projects. Now, just as within any HTML element, there is no need to memorize this. When you go to W3 School, everything is there. And if you recall in the class, I told you in the exam, if I tell you to, if you come for your practical exam, I expect you to use your laptop with the resources that you need to be able to come out with the questions that I will give you. So please take advantage of this and learn more from W3 School website or blog. Now, how do we create forms? So quickly, let's go into the VS Code and start the creation of a form. Now, of course, we would have to come out of the table elements and start our creation of the form. So I'll begin by maybe creating a paragraph. And within the paragraph, I'm going to create my form. So I can begin by saying, let's say a form like maybe, let's say forms or user information form, something of that sort. All right, and I'm going to break my page by using BR tag. This can break the page and put me on a different line or add more spaces to it. I can do this or that. They all would work. I can also break the page again to have enough space. This and this are all the same. All right, so I have enough space. So you begin the creation of a form by starting with the parent element called form. So type form. Then within this is the form. And by default, it comes with what we call an action, which is an attribute of the form. Every form goes with an action. The action is what you want the form to do when the submission button or when you submit the information that you have in there, where should it go? So we'll first of all we'll create the form action. For now, we're going to probably use the hashtag. We don't want the submission button to go anywhere. So begin the creation of the form by typing. So for instance, we want to, when you go to a website, so this it says user information form. So usually what we'll be looking out for might be the first name of the individual that we want the person to fill the information in there. So we can go in and say, inside the form element, we have a tag or an element called input. So the input, there are so many types of inputs available. Next, the default one that is given us is the text, the type, the attributes, the element is input, the attribute is type, and the value is text. So it means we want text from the user. That is where we have a text box where the user can put in some information in it. So the attributes is type, and the value that we have in for the attribute is text. So what do we want to take from the user? Usually we would want to take the person's maybe first name. So first name, that is the name, and the ID, we can give it an ID. Usually as you move along, you realize that you can call on specific IDs when you use JavaScript. So we can still use maybe first name as the ID, F name as the ID. Then we can have another attribute called placeholder. Placeholder is going to guide the user to know that the text box that the person is seeing, you're supposed to type in his or her first name. So what is shown in the placeholder here, what we have here is what is going to guide the user to know that this is what we want the user to type in the text box that we have. I'll save this, go back again to our website, and let's see how the page will look like. So you can see from here that we have user information standard out in here, and we have our first name showing in here. So there's a text, there's an input field in here, which is looking out for first name. So the person can enter the first name here, maybe Felix over here. So this is the first name thing. We can also create the same thing all over again. Maybe we want to pick up the last name of the person. So let us break the page by typing B, coming out to another input. This time round, what you are looking for is also a text. And we have to always give a name. The name is very important because that is what will be going into the database. You have to always specify the name. So we want the last name. We can use L name to represent the last name. We can use an ID, maybe L name again. It could be anything, something to make it easier for you to see. In the placeholder, we're going to use last name. This is to get the last name of the person. Now we can also, of course, I'm going to break the line so I can continue with another input type text. This time round, I would want to pick the username of the person. These are, let's change this user sign up form. Let's use sign up form. So usually when you go to a site and you sign up, these are some of the information that they require from you. So we can have another input, and it's also going to be text. So we'll have the name. We're going to use the username. We want the username of the user. We can give it an ID of maybe the same username. And a placeholder, something to guide the user that we need you to type your username. And then you can break it again, just to be on a different line. Then we can also pick another form element like email address. So we have inputs, inputs, and it's still going to be text. In the future, you realize you can have emails and stuff. But we use this element name and call it email. And the placeholder I'm going to use is email address. Of course, I'm going to break this BR. So now all the ones that we've saved, we've worked on so far fall under HTML text, input type text. You can see we have it in here. Let's get it a little organized by using more of the BR tags so that we have a little more spacing. Since we are not using CSS now, this is what I prefer we use. All right, so let me save this, go back again to the page. And of course, we have our information in here. There is also an HTML element called label. So you could have used an element like label for first name. Then we just bring the next thing as the tag. Well, I just most people don't use that style anymore. So let's continue with this. So I'll go back again to our page. I just want to make this one a little bigger. Let me use H1 for it, just to make it look a little bigger to distinguish it from the others. So I'll use H1. And of course, I'll delete one of the breaks so that we don't have so much space popping around. So, all right, so that's the sign up form. So, yeah. So continuing, we have about 4 input type tests. Let's go to another input tags tag input element or tag. We can also have another input element as that will allow multiple selection. So you can select so many things at a time. So there are times you have a selection where you can select maybe 2 of your favorite hobbies, displaying. How do we do that? We can still use what we call the select element. And the select element obviously comes with a name. So what do we want to do? Assuming we want there are a series of cars, maybe we have lots of cars in there, and we want to be able to come out with what I'll call it cars. And in here, what are we going to select? Inside the select, we're going to we want the user to make a selection of multiple cards. So we can use the attributes multiple, and that is great for select. So we'll give them the chance to select. So select tag itself will be the parent element, and it also have another element called options. Because we have so many as that are available that we want the user to make a selection, we would have to provide the options that are available. Some years past, we could have used the select to list maybe the years from 1900 to probably 2023. So the key element is the select, which is an example of the form element. And the select element also comes with what we call the option. So the option element, and it takes the value and also it takes an argument or an attribute of a value, which is just a minute. So the option will take a value of the first value of the type of car which we're going to use, maybe Volvo. Volvo, that might be the first option. So this session, we're going to type the name of the car itself, which is Volvo. Excuse me. Then we'll have our next option. The value is going to be maybe Fiat. So the car is actually Fiat. Sorry. The next option could be maybe Toyota. Toyota. The last option could be Honda. Let me put up another one. That could be Nissan. So these are the options that are available, and the user can make a selection of a minimum of about 2 or more. Let me save this. So this is an example. This is an example of another element that falls under form, the form element. So I'll save this. We go back to the site, and we can see from here when we select this, we can select Fiat also as well. We can hold down the control and select Volvo and also select Honda. So this is multiple selects. That is an example of the option to select as many as possible. So from here, you can see we have about 5 choices. And in cases where you want to display maybe 2 at a go, that is when we add the attribute called size. So for instance, over here, instead of just before multiple, we can have size in here and specify maybe 3. So coming back again to the page, you can see we have only 3 displaying in here. So we can scroll to get the others. And because the texts are not wide enough, we are unable to, it's a little small. So what we can do is to increase the text by we can have, there are times users and developers put up something like this option, and the value they have is maybe nothing, and they put in a text like this, or they can tell you make a selection. So this can also be done just to get, so this will not be part of the selection. So it depends on you. Now, when you program it, it means when a selection like this comes in, it shouldn't take it to the system, the database. So that is about the multiple selection. If we are going the normal route, then we just omit the multiple and have a selection like this. And with that, we can only select one item at a time. We can't select more than one. And again, with this, we can choose to forgo the size so that we just have a drop down to list the selection for us, so we can make a choice since it's just one. But in a case where you want to have multiple selection, the size attribute is very important. So that is one way of using the select element or attributes. So let's go to the next one, which is the text area. The text area is also an element of the form element. It falls under the force element, the form element. So the text area, times you might want users to type a lot of information in a box. So you can use a text element and a text area instead of using the input type text. So you can type the name of the text area if it is meant to take maybe information like a message. So for instance, if somebody wants to put up a message or a comment in here, we can call it comment and give it an idea of comments. It could be anything. The number of the columns and rows. So the rows gives you how wide it is, the columns, the number of characters that can go in there. And also the text that comes to it. So we're going to use what we call the maybe call it. So let's save it and see how it displays in here. So this is the comments. They can type in comment there, but let me put it on a different page. So I'm going to put up a BR tag here so we can have my information on a different page. Of course, this is, we can omit this one and put up even a placeholder. Let's see, call it comment. So you can see we are here, so we can put up the comments that we have in here. Let me bring another break tag in here so it gets a little organized, a little more organized. All right, so that is about the select. I told you, I reiterated that to have just one selection, there's no need to have a size because you're not going to have a multiple selection. No need to have a size. You can just remove the multiple attributes together with the size attributes from the select element. And that will help you get the simple select element. All right, so that is about the select element. So the rules, as I said, will give you the number of rows that you can have, the columns, the number of characters that you can have for each particular row. So that is about the text area. Now we can talk about, since we are in the form, let's talk about the next one. We can have an input of type submit. But before that, most times when we have an email, we normally also put up another element called, we normally take passwords of users. So we can have another input element, which we will not call text, but rather call password. So we use the keyword password, and what it's going to do is to hide the text that the user put in there and have a placeholder in there and say it's going to hold a password. And we can give it a name. These ones are very necessary because we always would have to have a name, so that is a password. And that is what we might be using to take information to the database. We can also give it an ID. ID of, let's say, password. We give IDs because we might be using it sometime to come. And that is a good practice. Let's go back again to that page. So you can see, I think I forgot to save the page. So let me save the page. Go back. All right, so this is the password. Let me break that page. Let me break the page again. The password. So let me see. And I'll break it. I'll break it again so it gets a little more organized. Right, so there's the password. So the information I put in here, you can see it's hidden. I can fill out other information in here. first name, password, and the rest. All right, so that works perfectly. So that is about it. So usually when we have this in mind, we have these forms created. There is one more thing that I would want us to also talk about, which is the radio button. So the radio button also works in this way. When you make a selection of one, the others are disabled. You can't select two radio buttons. So for instance, if we have a favorite color, let me just break this page again. Break again and start a new one. So for instance, if I want to take the favorite color, maybe it's favorite color of the person filling the form, I can use the radio button to do that. So still in the same vein, using the input tag. The input tag is normally used, it's used a lot. So using the input tag, this time around, I'm going to use the type called radio. Of course, I'm going to give it a name, and that could be F color. I could use F color. So if I have F color and I give it a value, so for instance, the name is color, the F color, the type is radio, and the value that I'm going to give is what is going to send to the database. So the value could be, let's say, blue. So at this point, I'm going to type in blue. So that is what is going to show in there. So we can have another, we can have another radio button using the same input. What makes it, we're going to, the type of course is going to be radio. And then the name we are going to use, we're not going to use a different name because they are all of the same favorite color. We use the same name, which is F color. So that will make the selection of the radio button one and not make the user select different colors of choice. So for instance, I can say this is green. Then I can have green in here. Green displaying by the radio button. So I can have green here. I can have another input. If you're vigilant, you realize that as I start typing inputs, it also displays certain things for me. So if I'm using email, I can use email. So inputs, this time around, I'm going to use, so the text I'm going to use same radio. And the last color I'm going to select is, has a name of color. And the value is going to be, let's say, red. Let me use the last one. So let me come out with, sorry, the last one. So when I type inputs, you can see I have color. The type is color. So actually fills in everything for me. So the type is using a radio. So the color is also meant for something else. Let us not get confused. You can try and find out what the color attribute also does. I'm going to use color. Then the value that I'm going to specify here is going to be, let's say, RGB, let's say black. So black. All right. So Since we are using the same name for the radio button, our chances of selecting a favorite color is just one. You can only make a choice of one. Going back again to the page and see we have radio button. When I select this one, the moment I select a different color, automatically the other one disables or vanishes. So we can make a selection of more than one colors. So that is a radio button. So you can have a radio button for male and female. So that if you select a male, female is also disabled. If you select a female, male is also disabled. So that is a radio button. In fact, there are lots of inputs, input types that are available and form elements that are available. I would want you to go through them and make a choice. In fact, go through some of the other ones that are available and see how you can incorporate it in your forms, in other forms. For your assignment, I'm traveling. For your assignment, I would want to see you come to class and be able to add the field set and the legend to your form. I will display a form as a class assignment or exercise for you. So you are going to come out with a form that looks similar to what the picture that I will display on the VLE for you. So please go to W3 Schools, look out for other forms, form element that exists to create the form that I'm going to show you. This is very important. I will be looking out for that when I come to class. So make sure you do that on Mondays and Tuesdays for the IS people, and also Tuesdays and Fridays for the computer science students. So please make sure you do it whilst in class or before you come to class, because I'm going to inspect. All right, so that is about the form. The most important form element that we need to talk about is the form is the input type submit. So let's go to the VS Code. The submit, when you take information from the user, you should find a way to submit that information to a database. So let me break this page. I'll break it as many times as possible. Then come out with another input element called, this time not test, but rather submit. So that is going to give us a submit button. We can have a value for a submit, and that value can take maybe submit. Let's say click here to submit. To submit form. So that is going to give us a long submit button. Right, so I'll save this, go back again to the page, and let's see what we have in there. So we have the button in here. So when I click on it, it's supposed to submit. But because if you recall, from the beginning, at the beginning stage, I told you the form has an action, and an action is where the information of the received form will go. I use the anchor tag hash or the tag hash. So hash will bring you back to the page, the same page where you are. We are already on page html.com. So if I click on submit, on the submit button, and I want it to go to UMath website, for the action, I can say https www.umath.gh, and that will go straight to the UMath website after picking the information from the user. So let's try it again. So I go to the bottom. Let me try and fill. You know how to fill, so you can fill some information in here. And when you're done, you can click on submit, and it should take you to the UMath website, which you can see loading in here. So that is how forms are. So You can see we have the F name, L name, username, and the rest. The form is taking a default submission action of get. That is why that information is showing at the top here. Now, as also another assignment, I would want you to look out for the difference between get and also post. When we talk of forms, HTML forms, what's the difference is? Difference between get and post. Sometimes too, we can have request. So get and post, find the difference between get and post. When do we use get? When do we use post? What is the advantage of using get and also post? Please, these are things that I would want you to know. I'll try and ask that same question when I meet you in class. So it takes our form to us to the UMAT website, which we can see. So that is about it. That is about forms. So we've been able to go through a lot of these information. In the next video that is going to come up, we will start with CSS. So have a good evening and make sure you do all the assignment that I've given you. When you are in class, of course, I will be checking it out. And start the form generation when you see the video on the VLE. Thank you very much.